Not Friday, it is February, February 13th, Thursday, February 13th. And we have with us the Department of Public Safety to go over some of your recommends. And we're going to start off with the Department of BGS with Joe Asia here just to give us a brief oversight. So Joe?
It's Commissioner first.
Oh, the Commissioner's going to go first. Commissioner Morrison?
Thank you. Good
Welcome.
afternoon.
Thank you. It's been a little scattered right now, so thank you.
It's okay. It's okay. We're all kind of scattered these days. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety, and with me today is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Whitcomb from the Vermont State Police. Normally we travel in a much bigger band, but really there's only a couple items on your agenda for us, and they appear to be related to the Vermont State Police. I heard that you had interest in talking about the special teams facility that had money in that project in last year's budget. Joe will be able to be more articulate about this, but it is my understanding that we are trying to find a new direction for that project, that there are perhaps more efficient ways to meet the needs that we have in that space. And I'll leave that one there. So I believe that's why you're not going to see an appropriation for that in this fiscal year. The other item that you wanted to probably want an update on is on the replacement of the Rutland State Police field station. As you probably remember, we purchased a parcel of land in nearby Clarendon back in 2018 to build that new field station, and we're still waiting to build it. That field station is in dire need, as I'm sure anyone who has driven by there can see. And the Lieutenant Colonel could happily draw you a much better word picture, but it's long overdue for replacement. And directly behind that, the other project that I know is on your books is the replacement of the Shaftesbury field station. Those are the capital bill items that we have. We're completely open to any questions you have. I think Joe is going to be able to provide a little more timeline information, design, plan, etc. And we're here for questions. So Joe, I think you can take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So Joe, are you going to get into some of these specifics in terms of the new direction for the special teams, as well as the 1.1 million that's been cash for the Rutland Field Station?
I didn't have details on a slide for you for that, but I can talk about it.
I think that would be really important, because between those two, we've got $2.2 million of cash tied up. And if there's a new direction for the special teams, I think also because we have 6 new members of the committee, it might be really worth it. I don't know if this would be you, Commissioner, or BTS, to talk about what the special team is and the facility in terms of what the concept was for that last year.
Yes, ma'am. I'd be happy to speak to that. So we're calling it a special teams building, but what it is for is to consolidate several special teams equipment across the entire Department of Public Safety enterprise. So we currently house most of our assets for the urban search and rescue team. So that includes swiftwater rescue boats, shoring and structural collapse equipment, large trailers, large trucks, all kinds of equipment. And we also co-locate a good portion of the hazardous materials teams, gear and trucks and special equipment. And they are currently being stored in a, shall we call it a surplus hangar type garage at the AOT property in Fort Ethan Allen. This is a very dilapidated building with no fire suppression capability. So we have millions and millions of dollars of assets that are essential to public safety sitting in a relatively unprotected space. The chief of the urban search and rescue team and the chief of the hazmat team have their offices there. It is extremely substandard. I've spent a lot of time there. And it was really very, very kind of Joe Flynn and AOT to allow us to use that space. It was never intended to be for this long. It's been many, many years. So in recognition that we have this exposure of all that equipment sitting there in an unsecure facility and that is not fire suppressed, we determined that we would take that opportunity and combine it with what came up when we built the new Williston State Police Field Station. That site plan had called for cold storage and for storage of our recreational boating assets. So boats, trailers, trucks, stuff that obviously isn't being used this time of year, and other specialty purpose vehicles that the state police have. When they built the project in Williston, that got cut out along with the cold storage because of the amount of ledge that they found at the site. And it was going to be, Joe could probably explain it better, but it was just not going to be possible. So we continue to have the boats and all these other assets located at the old Williston State Police Barracks right off of exit 12, which is now serving as a homeless shelter and is obviously in BGS's sights for selling at some point. The third component of this new building was going to be, if we're building it and putting a couple offices in it, it's an opportunity to get out of a lease that we're currently paying to have a Williston Fire Safety Office where that's our regional fire safety office, and we could easily collapse that office into this new building. So we're calling it a special teams building because it's a whole bunch of things from across the DPS enterprise coming together, and that is the vision. We had some plans that were progressing. We have been asked to redirect and find a new solution, and I think Joe is prepared to speak to that.
Is there any questions to the committee for that? Troy?
I missed it. Do we have a site? Do we have the land?
No,
We don't have land.
No land. Okay.
that was part of where the money was to
But-
find the land.
Are you looking, what was the Williston Fire component of this? So does this have to be in Williston?
The regional, no, it does not have to be in Williston.
Okay.
So we have our regional fire safety office for that region of the state in Williston in leased space. So it doesn't have to be in Williston, but it has to be in the Northwest region.
Thank you.
I will point out that 90% or more of our, I call them volunteers, but they're not, they're paid when they train and activate. So 90% of our urban search and rescue team members live in Chittenden County. So it is pretty important that we stay somewhere near Chittenden County in terms of getting apparatus deployed quickly.
What questions are those?
I'm sorry, did you ask me a
No.
question?
No, I just asked if there was any questions of the committee. Do you want to give us now an update, Joe, on where we are with this? Well, it's in people's hands.
Yes, for the record, Joe Ajak, Director for Design and Construction of Building and General Services. And so what we did with the funding that was provided is we went out and searched for build a suit with a lease, long-term lease for this.
You went out and searched for a long-term
We
lease.
RFP was for build to suit with a lease, 20-year option. And so we have been working with the developer to come up with an approved floor plan and at a rate that we can afford. And that's where we are right now is with the property that the developer was proposing, along with the requirements of all the units that are involved, it's higher than what we anticipated. So we're just taking a step back now and trying to regroup as to what we can do. Does that mean that one of the groups that we're looking to go into this facility, we carve them out? And does that reduce the price enough to make it viable? Or do we look at other options? So that's where we're at right now.
So what was, how many acres do we need for something like this? And what price was higher? Was it the whole development? Was it gonna be the lease?
It was a lease payment.
It was a lease
Yes.
payment.
And I don't recall what the acreage was. When we put the RFP out to bid because we weren't 100% certain of how the layout of the building was going to be. We had a proposal that these are the groups that needed to go together and how they coexisted, which is more of a linear building. We did have proposals in there that came with an L-shaped. And so depending on where the property was located. Right now, the site that we were looking at is the fire safety division that we're looking to put in there was going to be on a second floor because of the slope of the site. And so we'd have most of the garage space being entered from the low side, the office space from the high side.
So the model you were looking at, just so the committee knows, was a design build.
It is design build, correct?
So the developer owned the land? Would they be owning the land?
Yes, they would.
There's the developer would own the land. The developer would build the building to our specs. And then we would lease it back. So there is no capital fund dollars being used to build the building or purchase the land. Is any of that 1.1 million going to be used for design documents?
It is being used for that purpose, for the front end of that, for the programming of it, and also for the schematic design development.
How much of the 1 million is out the door?
That I don't recall. I'd have to look that up.
Go for it, Troy.
Nothing, right? Because, as of 2/3, the cash is showing up as all of, oh no, it looks like you expended 143,875 of the FY 24. Does that sound right?
Or it very well could be, because of this is a design build lease. It could be that at the end of our design that we come to that agreement. Or if we have to get out of it, that we would pay them for their work they've completed to date, otherwise it'd be rolled into the lease. So that could be for bringing it out to bid, the likes of that.
So it seems like last year, I'm trying to recall, and I'm gonna look to Connor and Mary and Troy. It seems like we were not looking at a design build last year, were we? Or the year
I think
before?
as it first started out, maybe not. But I think because of the potential cost, I think then it was switched.
I thought it did come up, to be honest.
Well, I don't know, because we put in FY 24, 250. That was, and then we put in 1 million in FY 25. Figuring the 250 will get you going on design documents. And then last year, we cut that 1,025,000 down to 850. Because it wasn't proceeding as quickly. So if we're doing a design build, it's our goal.
Mhm.
You need the full 1.1 million.
I can't answer that right now.
Does committee
I don't
know
know
what
what
I'm
we have
asking?
spent.
Yep.
Does committee know what I'm asking here, particularly the new members?
Big difference.
Because there's nothing to stop us to go back into FY 24 and 25. The project's not going forward. And the cash is sitting there. Or the bonded capacity is sitting there.
Is that gonna be hard to get for an answer, Joe?
No. We should be able to get something reasonable.
'Cause I don't remember if last year, I mean, we did cut it back by 150,000. Because we weren't quite ready to go ahead. I'm just wondering, now that you've switched to a design build, because my understanding was we're trying to find property to build on.
I believe that's how we started out. And I all the rest of it.
Is this the one that had the site? Franklin County.
Well,
There was a site that we were looking to build, I thought some of this storage on, and not at all remembering what it was, but it was by the river.
Yeah.
That's not this,
By where the-
okay. I can't remember what that was, sorry.
so if you could get back to us to figure out mean, I don't want to cut you folks short. I want to make sure if you find a developer and a design build that works, or you can renegotiate at least for folks for at least, when you do a design build, there is not the pressure on the capital bill. You take that pressure off because the developer usually will own the land, not always, but usually. And the developer will build the building to our specs. And then we lease the building back. We don't own the building. The developer owns the building. And we lease the building back. Those lease payments come out of the appropriations. Come out of the general fund.
Yeah.
So we're putting, by doing that model, you put pressure on your general fund in the long run. Because that's what you're doing. You're not doing bonded dollars, build it. And that's a model we're doing or hope to be doing for Jens. For the replacing of Woodside. That's the model that we're looking at there. So by doing a design build, it helps us in terms of bonding capacity, but it puts pressure on the budgets for Department of Public Safety would have to come up, or BGS would have to come up with some general fund dollars in their budget to pay the lease. So there's a shift to it.
And it also encumbers future bienniums.
Right, you put pressure.
So it's just like a potted dollar in that regard.
But it's coming out of a different.
I understand that.
That's where it is. It's coming out of a different source,
And is there a typical length for these kinds of leases?
20 to 30 years.
20, 30?
Sometimes with the option to buy at the end.
And do we have to maintain it or does the owner,
Depends what gets negotiated for that lease.
so that's not standard and negotiable? Got it.
Sometimes what's negotiated in the lease, they take care of the maintenance and the utilities. Sometimes we take care of maintenance or utilities. It depends what gets negotiated for that. But I just want the committee to know you're in the long run putting pressure
Mhm.
on the general fund with that. Because sometimes in policy committees, they don't realize how much pressure their policy is going to put on the appropriations vote.
Sometimes.
A lot.
It's like a lot of things, you're pushing off what could be paid today because you can't onto the future and hoping that it works out.
Yeah. And I've always been really sensitive about this in our world with building. If we do a design build, that there's pressures within our other committee. And give them a heads up if that's gonna happen. So Joe, if you could kind of, I don't want to short you
Okay.
for the 1.1 million, but, and this may be something we may not know
Did you get that down?
more information until
Could you get a copy of it?
March, April, whatever.
We'll get back to you.
Any questions?
Stop it. Stop.
Okay, I want to get into,
Awesome.
why don't you, well, I'll leave it up to you.
This is all, yeah.
Yeah. And I know about it. It's all right. No, this is the one I was here today.
Okay.
Get rid- Sorry, that hasn't been. So first up is the Shasbury Field Station for land acquisition, planning and design. Well, as the kicker was saying, this is yet another one of their facilities that needs to be replaced. But we have, it started out in Derby back in 2002, 2003. It's somewhat of a cookie cutter design for this facility. It's somewhat of an H-shaped building so that depending on where they are and the size of their requirements, the building can expand in multiple different ways. And so we have put in since then several locations. There's an anomaly to that at the Berlin facility. The Berlin facility was not a new build, it was a renovation of the old public library. That we had, State Library that was up there. So we've done Derby, Royalton, New Haven, St. Albans, Westminster, Berlin, and then Williston. And so Rutland actually is up next, and then Public Safety is looking for Shaftesbury. And Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, after that, I think there's just St. Johnsbury that's remaining. They also have an outpost in Bradford, an old metal building that they use from.
I think the lieutenant colonel is going to have to confirm that one. I know
Okay.
St. Johnsbury is also in the mix.
Yeah, St. Johnsbury's right behind Shaftesbury. And the Bradford office space is not a factor anymore for us.
And then I think that's all the facilities.
So we start all over again.
Been a few years.
No needs a job.
No time.
So the existing facility in Shaftesbury is lease space. I think it's been lease space ever since I've been here with BGS. And so their primary coverage is, the Bennington County area. They go over a little bit into Wyndham County, exactly where public safety would have to weigh in on that. And again, as I said, the barracks will be looking for land that could hold roughly the barracks that is cookie cutter, unless you get something along. Came along, some of the like Berlin that would actually be accommodating to do that. And what we're looking for initially is $150,000 in bonded costs to start this process of searching for land and then moving forward. Ultimately with planning, design, and construction. We're going to get $7 million in the out year right now for FY22. Madam Chair said FY27. Their first funding request, and then it would be in the next biennium.
How much acreage do you need for this?
It varies, depends on the amount that they need. I have not looked into Shaftesbury to see what the requirements are. But it's a 5 to 7 acre, depends whether it's flat, sloped. Whether or not we have to do on-site sewer, water.
And are you looking at any particular community, or do you
Yeah.
want to keep it in Shaftesbury? And that may be a question more
That's a question. for
for
public safety.
DPS.
Yeah.
And Colonel Whitcomb? If you
Yes,
could just identify yourself for the record too.
apologize. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Whitcomb. I'm the Deputy Director of the State Police. To the question, it is one of our smaller barracks, and positioning is very important for us. It certainly is in a good spot right now. Someplace close to that to gain access to Route 7 is ideal. And back to operationally, from a standpoint of the office space, that criminal division component is key there. But it should not be equated to a barracks like Williston, Westminster, or even Rutland or St. Albans. It is a bit smaller.
So I'm going to ask a
Mhm.
question from left field. So we lease the building in the land.
Mm.
Is there enough land there for 5 to 7 acres?
Joe,
I don't know.
it
Is the-
feels just from being down there small. The office is that space is extremely tight.
What I'm just wondering is it's in a good location. Now it's right near Route 7, right near Route 7. Yes. I'm just wondering if there's a possibility of purchasing it, if there was enough land, and demolishing the building and building new.
I will say that there's a quarry right there. Part of the issues that we have with that spot is the amount of dust that is kicked up. You can see actually in the picture the backside of that barracks is right up against
Right up
that
against
quarry
the
space, that processing area. Being down there, it is a substantial issue. That dust is flying constantly in that area. Yeah.
That's not good.
What are land prices for down around Bennington County? Are they equivalent to land prices? Like I'm thinking more up around the Manchester, Dorset area would be more equivalent to what you're gonna find in Chittenden County, I would assume. That's my hunch. I don't
I
know.
don't know. No idea.
Manchester and Dorset are usually, Manchester and Dorset are usually higher,
Right.
Well, yeah, it's.
way higher.
Yeah. So questions? Sean?
Yeah, what kind of buildings are you putting up, Joe? Do they last longer? Are they more, what is that? What would you replace that with?
I think we'd stick to the same plan that we've done with all of them, which is, stick built.
Yep.
We've held, Derby now is, we've had to do some reciting on that. That was, most of them had cement poured siding down low. Been a problem. Otherwise hasn't been, has been an issue. We started to replace some roofs. Derby's flooring is being done sometime this year, and that's the original floor. The walls and everything else hold up quite well.
Good. Good. Sounds good.
They treat it well, so.
The questions?
I mean, I'm just curious, but I think you already said it, is that you don't really have any potential sites in mind.
Right. We have not started looking yet.
So I guess my obvious question is, if we don't have any idea where we're gonna buy the land, how do we come up with $7 million?
Based on past projects. So the last two that we have built, other than Berlin, where we owned the land, owned the building, which is minor renovations on the inside. We're looking at Williston and Westminster, back in,
Years.
13, maybe 11, when
Well, we postponed it because of Waterbury Complex. So it didn't really get.
after that, maybe
completed.
14, in that ballpark.
Yeah.
That one was 7 million. Roughly, it was a larger facility because it also has a public safety answering point there. But just looking at the inflation to today, it's roughly in that same ballpark. The hard part is land, not knowing what that would cost.
Right.
Water and sewer, whether it's on site or off site, also comes into play with that. But it's our best estimate that we have right now.
Yeah. I'm not quibbling, I just was curious.
Never good on my estimate.
Don't really have a
Several
design,
years out.
we don't have a land and.
Right, but it is based on
$7,000.
our historic properties that we have constructed in the past.
So this one does not have a PSAP in it.
Correct.
And the property that you need to find has to be able to have radio transmission capability. Right?
That is correct.
Doesn't have a what?
Correct.
PSAP, Public
Mine.
Service Answering.
Okay.
So to put it in perspective, the Williston Barracks, that was much more involved and larger, was 24 million.
We figured that about almost 2 million. It was about 21 million. We're all said and done with that
It's a
facility.
Yeah, because we thought it was going to come in as a cost overrun too.
Did you do the parking lot up there too, while you were up there?
V-Trans did the parking lot.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
roughly done at the same time.
I know it's a great facility, it's a beautiful facility.
So there are some restrictions in terms of where you can site something like this, because you got to make sure the radio tower, they have access.
Yes.
to that.
Yeah.
So the 150 is for possible land acquisition, and you can do schematic designs done,
Maybe.
maybe?
It's to get it out to, our schematic design is roughly done. It's really taking what they have now for their program down there, the number of people, and just shrinking the existing facility that we last constructed, which was Williston, and see how that fits.
It's not really a question. I said, I don't know how you're getting any more than land acquisition done for 150 grand.
You're correct.
You know,
And
unless
it
you-
may not be that we even get land acquisition with the 150, so, but it's a start to get us going to go, RFP together, go out, find the land, start doing testing on it. Again, it's taking the drawings that we did in Williston. We do have to apply the new energy codes to it and then shrink it accordingly. But again, as I said, the width of it is roughly the same. All you're doing is the length of the hallway gets reduced.
So the reason that I ask that is if you look at the language in the book, it says land acquisition, planning and design. We have to be really specific when we get into markup in terms of the language that's in the bill. And the language on the spreadsheet is very clear what that 150,000 is gonna go for. So that's why I asked the question. Sometimes we just say land acquisition because that's all we know we're gonna be able to do. In this particular case, we're gonna try to do land acquisition, and some of that planning and design has already been done because we do these as a cookie cutter, but you're gonna have to adjust it accordingly.
Yes.
I'm not being facetious, but is there any, obviously, planning and design is subsequent to land acquisition. Is there any harm in leaving that language planning design, even though it's probably not feasible for $150,000?
I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
It's certainly the beginning of that. It would be in the next biennium what we would be following up with, depending on what we find. I mean, again, we have to go out. We're going to potentially do, depends on where the site is, borings, do maybe a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental study so that we know what's in the ground and the likes of that. So that's part of that planning. And the design would also be to look at the building size, right size it, and lay it out on the potential property. The actual, we need additional design funds to finish that. They said the outside walls in Williston do not meet today's requirements for insulation. So that would have to be evaluated.
Yes.
There are the typical details that we have to change.
The new Williston doesn't meet?
In the new
Doesn't meet-
commercial energy code that was built under the last energy code. So it just changed in January, I think. I forget when the new energy code came.
Interesting.
Yes.
So this 150 is for FY 27. It's not
Yes.
for this current year. So the plan is that in FY 27, which will be calendar year beginning July of 2026. So a year and a half from now, they would start to look to replace the Shaftesbury Barracks. That's the time frame. So they're projecting in FY 27 to start looking at Shaftesbury. Yeah, I'm just.
I was just, my comment is obviously you guys already know, 150 doesn't get you very far, right? I mean, in this, even in ideal situations, in my head, I'm like. But you've done it before, I'm assuming that.
Yes, but the other thing that will be taken into account is the design for Rutland should be complete during this time frame also. And that'll lend itself to going down to Shaftesbury because we'll be using the new energy codes. And so again, it'll just be a size thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking.
Modifying that, no.
Yeah.
Never know what the land is gonna cost
Right.
when we find it.
Yeah, so. Just in my head, I'm like, so.
I presume a prerequisite is the land needs to be near access to primary highways.
Route 7.
There, yes, yeah.
What's going through my mind is I know, and I'm just wondering if the special fields one, the special teams, facilities and storage, if that doesn't seem to have a go-ahead, or it's gonna be a stumbling block, the Shaftesbury one be jump-started? Or is that too much all at once with working with Rutland?
Very well could be with all the other stuff that's, yes.
Jump-started?
I know it could be too much. I'd have to defer to my commissioner on that.
Okay. Mary?
During this time, though, I know we're not looking to appropriate money until 27. But do your folks keep an eye out on land that's possible prior to that? If a really great piece of property came up at a great price, do you keep an eye on that till the point you purchase? Or-
I can't speak for the Director of Property Management, but knowing that this is coming out, that very well could be, because I know he does receive calls at times, hey, we're looking to sell some property, is the state interested? So possibly, yes.
Cause I would hate for us to miss a good piece of property at a good price and we don't have money for it till following year. But again, I'm not advocating anything.
Well, this is an option that the committee could do. You could bump that 150 up to FY 26.
Because we've been waiting a very long time, and I know you don't want to hear about Bennington in this committee.
Is that in Massachusetts?
This has a this has a history, not connected to
This is,
Bennington, but to,
This has been on the docket for years and years and years and years.
it was fought by one member from
Right,
Shaftesbury.
yes. And it's time that it gets done because the southern part of the state is traveling all over the place trying to get to other parts of our southern Vermont to do law enforcement. So obviously I'd like to see it done sooner, but I just wondered with the land, so thank you for.
You have a place to put a tower,
Can't do it with that, well.
device in town that we can put.
And put it on my house.
Joe,
Yes.
I know I've been asked, I was busy doing something. So let's just pretend we bumped it up. You guys have the capacity for that? To start early? Or is it a contingent upon the special operations?
Contingent on everything in the capital bill and also working on the flood. It'd be contingent on anything else that might get shifted to the capital bill of what's being proposed, but also we have here, redoing Montclair.
So in other words, it may not be possible.
Right.
Even if we gave you the money.
Moved it up, it may not, could we search for land? Probably. But then it's a matter of, getting somebody else on board to then do the fit, do the environmental assessments.
Acquiring the land, would it hurt us to have the land a year in advance? Is that hard? Is that part hard? So
It's not,
I noticed like
it's not hard, but it's just having the manpower in the office to put this off, to go search for land and to purchase it's another division.
Yeah.
So certainly they may be able to handle that load, but then it's going to be, having an architect evaluate the site, civil engineers and the likes of that, and that I might not have the time for, so. But that's something we can talk internally and come back with.
Well, I'm just thinking what Mary stated, there could be a parcel that pops up that we're not thinking about. One thing we could do is bump that 150 over to FY 26 and just keep FY 27 zero at this. We could do that. Then it gives you the flexibility in case something does come up.
Right, that was really my only thing is I'd hate for us to miss these price.
The group has authority to put money down, the commission, BGS commissioner has the authority to put an option down on property. And we could use the planning funds to do that, to hold that. So that is also an option rent.
Any funds from your planning reuse.
For the option. And then settle up in later years. The later year. So that's also something that, the piece of property did come up.
That's something the committee can weigh when we do markup.
Yep.
We want to bump it up to FY 26 or just leave it in FY 27. Do folks follow that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're gonna give us a better answer, or not a better answer, because you do great answers, but a more,
Yes.
yeah, you know what I meant. We're on the same page.
We'll look into this to see how it fits into everything else.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, appreciate it.
Joe, does that happen a lot?
This is what happened.
Do you all find land and are like, okay, I'm gonna put some money down just to grab it? Do you do that sometimes?
It's not often that we were looking for land. I think in the past several years, it's higher than normal, but not often.
Well, it has happened.
Yes, it
Buy
has.
a lab halfway through a legislative session, 617. Right?
Yes, I do remember that. I was only project manager back then, so I didn't pay
Yeah,
much
yeah, why?
attention.
Little acquisitions. Did
Only project.
Now we sold it 6 years later.
you make any money?
No.
This is going back.
No, we were gonna move the Williston Police Barracks up there, and then we were gonna build the
All the labs were gonna go there.
forensic lab and a
Yes.
health lab, right?
Yes, yep, they're all going there.
Years later, it fell
Oh,
apart, and we
It's
still,
gonna
it
happen.
was the old IBM building up in Essex,
Oh.
617.
Project's there now.
It was a great deal.
That's where they moved to.
Yeah, it was a
Gotcha.
great deal, and it came up in April, I think it was. So we bought it for 3 million or whatever, we bought it. Put it in the Capitol
It can
building,
happen.
the last minute.
Answer that
That was gonna be our saving grace.
All I was asking if it could.
We're gonna do everything we can for you, Mary.
Okay, let's move on.
Really?
Let's move on.
Up next is the Rutland Field Station Design and Construction. And so we did purchase this land a while back. We were actually acquiring land while we were doing the design for Westminster. And knowing that this was coming up next. However, during that time frame, with the ongoing construction of Westminster, Williston facility was deteriorating relatively quick. And what we're looking to do at that time, I think, was to replace the roof. It was a metal building, so it was take off the metal roof and needed, again, with the energy code, adding additional insulation. Was going to have the structural requirements and the likes of that. It was just getting too costly for roughly short term. And that is why at that point in time, it was to move up the purchase of land, design and construction of the Williston facility. So that's all done now. Williston's complete. Everybody's, I believe, is happy. And so we're back to the Williston Field Station. Down on the upper photo is of the existing location in Rutland. It's not in a floodplain. However, they somewhat get a moat during the high flood season. So that is a problem because of the bridge that they have to cross. So it can somewhat landlocked down. Agency of Transportation is there, so is the Department of Motor Vehicles
That's.
in that area. And that's on the northern end of Rutland. I think Public Safety, correct me, I think that's at the northern end also of their area that they serve. And so we looked at North Clarendon, and we're at the intersections of Route 7 and 103, 103 going to the state airport. And the lower photo is showing you the outline of the property. The two orange lines that are running through there was for Green Mountain Power. They had an easement running through there. Green Mountain Power right now is looking to reroute those lines to actually follow the western left-hand side of the page to the southern end all the way around. And so basically be right on the edge of our property line. So what we had laid out originally for the building of a garage on one side, building on the main building on the other. Now we can take that whole site into play and maximize it. It is relatively more land than we need, but we need to deal with stormwater. That wasn't as big as it was when we initially purchased the property. We also have poor soils on the site. So we've done an investigation already as to where we could put leach fields. And we probably end up, because of the size of the facility, 2 leach fields. We had to do the soils. The airport group, I forget what their name is. They actually are running from the airport in the area in and around the airport, a force main that goes to the Rutland sewer system. Not sure whether or not we could tie into that. Back in the day when we purchased the land, they had capacity at that point in time. Whether they do now, I don't know. But that's one of the other things that we would be investigating.
That would be a perfect spot. So.
Yes. Also, there's no public water supply there, so we'd be on a drilled well. The white buildings that you see sort of off in the upper right-hand corner of that are solar panels. So neighbors are minimal. Access point right now on to which road it would be, not sure. gotta work with V-Trans on that. I think public safety would like to come off onto 103. But that would be one of the, what's the traffic on that road and likes of that now as opposed to when we purchased the land. So we have to do that study, work with transportation on that.
103 is not as busy as 7.
That is correct.
And then you come right on, when you come on to Route 7 from 103, going into Rutland, there's a lot of traffic there. To have another entrance, I'm afraid you'll be in the same situation that you were in Williston.
Yeah, we would not be looking to front onto Route 7. I don't think transportation would like us to do that either. And there was talk of just doing it off of 103.
Yeah.
It depends on how we lay it out on the property. So first we'll be looking, for the leach fields, stormwater retention. It does slope from the top down towards 103, so that's somewhat of a bonus.
Well, do you have a question?
So once Green Mountain Power moves the lines, I don't remember what you said, the 2 orange lines.
That's right now is the easement that they have to run their power through, and that'll go away, and they'll be on the west and southern end of our property line.
And then it'll just be one, I mean, it is one contiguous property
It is, but-
technically, but it would all be accessible from other.
That is correct.
So would you anticipate the building to be similar to the eventual building to replace Shaftesbury? In terms of the needs in there? Because they don't have a PSAP, right?
That is correct. So it would be similar, it's just a matter of what the personnel level is at that field station to accommodate them.
So I'm looking at your chart and you have 397,000 FY 24 for bonds, and I don't see that
You don't, like,
on
well,
our
I
spreadsheet.
decided do I put it in or not put it in because it is approved through. So that was way back when we purchased the property.
Okay, so.
We expended 397,000, a little less than that actually, to purchase the property, do some site investigation and the likes of that. So that is where that is from. Then the cash fund put in 250,000 and 54, along with bonded funds for 850 for FY 25.
So have you used any of that 1.1 at all? Because that was a combination of FY 24 and 25 cash.
We have not started that yet. We got an RFP in the works, but that's as far as we've gotten so far.
So that's why the 4 million is bumped out to FY 27, because that's when you anticipate going to construction.
Yes. I think with everything the way it is, we would probably look to contract with a construction manager to move the project along faster so that we can pre-order equipment because of the long duration of your HVAC equipment. But we still have to do a life cycle cost as to what we are going to do down there. Whether it is going to be, geothermal, pellets or the likes of that.
Did you say that this was a combo of cash and bonded? Because I'm seeing all cash.
The 250 and 850 is cash, 397 from way back in
Yeah, okay.
20 something was bonded.
Yeah.
It's back there.
Curious question.
Go ahead.
When you're doing something like this,
21.
do we anticipate based on the location expansion in the next 15 years or something like that? Or do we just hit that when we need it? How do we?
When we're purchasing land, we look for that. We don't know what that expansion is going to look like, but when we're looking at land to have that, this site would be able to hold an expansion.
Yeah, I'm not worried about this side. I was just curious in general. Do you look at demographics and say Rutland is growing or it's waning or whatever?
We don't look at that. We take what we're doing for the present. And then hope, when we're looking at land to purchase enough so that there is room for
So
expansion.
there's some buffer there.
I don't know, over the years, probably that we've been doing this to plan for that expansion that never happens where we think it's going to be, or things change and instead of going back and front now.
Yeah, just curious.
Any other questions here? Anything that Lieutenant Colonel Whitcomb, you want to weigh in, or Commissioner Morrison?
I'd be pleased to weigh in and just say that from programmatic needs, the Department of Public Safety is very clear in our order of play of priorities. The special teams building is our highest priority. It's our greatest exposure right now, and it's the one that has the most potential to hamper our ability to provide emergency services. The Rutland/Clarendon Field Station is our second priority, and Shaftesbury is third. They're all very, very important. And obviously, we wish the timeline could go much quicker on all of them. But when we are faced with having to prioritize internally, we are a very clear 1, 2, 3 order of play.
What was the first one?
The field,
special
the special
teams.
teams.
Oh, right, okay.
It's not really special teams. That's just what we're calling it because there's so many different things being put together, and many of those assets come from various special teams.
And the key for the special teams is working in a design build, working with a developer, and the key is that the lease payments are doable and reasonable.
How much higher was that than you were anticipating
I don't recall.
on the, okay.
I don't recall the total amount. I think, Madam Chair, the key to that project is finding a path forward that everyone in the enterprise can agree is the most efficient way to use the few dollars that we have available. I'm trying to turn over different rocks, and I know Joe's team is talking with other state agencies that may have space available at some of their places to see if we can co-locate. We're trying to be creative to move this forward in a way that everybody can support.
So what, I've got a lot of stuff going through my mind on this one, hearing your priorities. And I know you got 1.1 million towards the special teams. You don't know if you're gonna need that or not. And if something should really come forward and 1.1 doesn't quite get you there, I'm wondering, I'm just throwing this out for thought. I'm wondering if we split for the Rutland Field Station, the 4 million, split that 2 and 2. 2 and 26 and 2 and 27, and have language that allows you to move money between the special teams and Rutland. If you find something comes to light in FY 25, 1.1 doesn't get you there. I'm just throwing out a thought.
I'm very supportive of things that allow us to have flexibility as we can find a path forward that everyone can support. So yes, I'd be greatly appreciative if you are able to find a way to give us that flexibility.
Just a thought. Doesn't mean we're gonna do it, but I can put that on
I
the table.
understand completely. I understand.
We can also cut back to 1.1 from the previous
Okay.
year and allow you to use more of the Rutland. Also do that, but I don't know. And just put some thoughts on the table for the committee to process.
Got it. Spread it out.
Right. A versus shall.
Work with the money. We want it to, Other thoughts, questions before we finish up on this?
No, I appreciate that she broke it out like the in order that they want. That helps a
That
lot.
helps with the priority.
Yeah.
That really helped. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. We appreciate
much.
it.
Thank
And
you,
we're
Madam
gonna be
Chair.
we're gonna be doing markup towards the end of this month. Last week is our goal to start markup, so that's when the rubber hits the road in terms of what dollar amounts we put towards each line item.
Well, we appreciate your help and all your efforts. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for your information. That helped.
You're welcome.
You're
You're
welcome.
Okay. Oh, if you want to stay and listen to the next one, because your commissioner, we were running out of time. Your commissioner was going to weigh in on H50 on state plans. He's Connor Casey's, you know, he's our other terrorist. Terrorist.
You're Irish, you know that.
I have no information on that.
I know, but maybe you want to hear and bring back to the commissioner.
Cole is.
Oh, Cole's here. I forgot about you. Sorry, Cole, you're so quiet.
Support?
And Cole already signed off on it. We're all good. He doesn't need a wingman.
So.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
As Joe walks.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you lift?
Hi, Joe. Wanda's in the building.
She's tied up.
Oh,
She was due to come in at 11. It's tied up.
but we're still live.
on purpose.
We're still
We're still,
live.
I'm sorry.
We're still
I
live.
thought we took.
How could I just call the terrorist on the record?
Yeah.
Trying to get myself organized.
Well, I think you're here for-
Gears for,
Connor was saying, are we still live?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
very much. So for folks, we're shifting gears, pull out House Bill 50.
Oh, yes, House Bill 50.
House Bill 50.
I'll be right.
You gotta pull that
Connor
out.
Casey.
Who's Bill?
Connor's bill, House Bill, which you'll find, folks, for if you have paper copies for bills, it's really handy to have separate folders for each one, if you're doing it by paper. And if you're doing it electronically, it's really helpful to set up a file that you can put all the documents for that particular bill. So there'd be a file electronically that says H50, and every document you get will get filed in that electronic file. Not that I'm telling you what to do, but
Suggestion.
it's a,
Oh, yeah, it's good.
you're gonna have to have the language of the bill in front of you.
I think it was passed out previously.
Yes.
Only one sentence, I've memorized it. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's really not much meat on that.
Doesn't mean there's not a lot of potatoes to stew.
So we have Agency of Transportation, Rob White with us, who's a project delivery bureau director. So welcome. And you saw the questions we can ask, so be prepared.
Ready.
I just want to give the committee a heads up that the bulk of probably we'll be working with would be BGS land as well. And BGS didn't have a chance because we got into later than we thought this morning in our joint meeting. So we'll work with AOT and we will reschedule Commissioner at BGS. If there's anything you want to weigh in, if you dare, Paul, we can give you the opportunity if you wish. Feel free to raise your hand.
We'll see. That's a no. I'll do this.
Eric always weighed in, and Wanda, when she was in your position, weighed in. So we'll get you to weigh in. Don't worry.
Cole's like, I'm smarter than that.
Like, I've had a perfectly good day.
Probably petrified of us. So what this bill would do, and you walked them through, right?
Yes, you did.
Would have BGS identify state and real property that's under their ownership, or state property, because there's state property under AOT and different ownerships. It would be suitable to convert over to affordable housing. And if you go on page 2, it says on or before January 15th of each new biennium. It's not every year, it's the beginning of a new biennium would send to us, General Assembly, a report that examines whether any of the state's real property, including unutilized lots, like parking lots,
Exactly.
in population centers is suitable for conversion into affordable housing. That's what the law, that's what the bill says. And then I'll turn it over to our AOT person. You could just identify yourself for the record and weigh in terms of what it looks like, how this bill would, how you would work with BGS to submit a report like this, how much state-owned land you have, how much of it is. I'm gonna be careful here because I know you have a lot of right-of-ways for that, but potential property that you have that could be used for building on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Rob White, Project Delivery Bureau Director at the Agency of Transportation. And I'll just note that in a past life, for 12 years, I was the right-of-way chief at the Agency of Transportation. So I do know quite a bit about the land, at least the right-of-way sides. I'm going to start by, we really have two categories of land at the Agency of Transportation. One is we have the federally funded land. That's mostly the highway right-of-way. There are some parcels out there that could be mitigation parcels. When we develop projects, sometimes we need to buy land for deer wintering yards that we might impact, or wetlands, or whatever else. There are parcels out there that we control that don't necessarily have much of anything on them. So there's that piece. And then the other piece is really the state funded lands that we have. And so we have maintenance garages across the state. Some of our lands is actually managed more by BGS, like you might think about rest areas and such. Those are really managed by BGS. We help out with sort of the transportation around, whether it's paving the parking lots or what. I'm going to step back to the federal lands because that's the federally funded land, because that's the easiest. Basically, because we've used federal highway monies, anytime that we turn over a property, that the proceeds of that, whether we lease or sell it, the proceeds of that has to go into the Title 23 fund.
Which is?
The Title 23 fund is the fund that is used for transportation projects, the same that those monies that were bought for the land, that we used to buy the land, were used for. So the only thing it doesn't cover Title 23 funds is maintenance activities. So anything that we could use federal funds for, we could use these, what are now state funds, when they come back into the Title 23 fund.
To be reused for transportation projects.
You got it.
So that's why I put this down. So I think it would be helpful for committee members to know how much federal percentages of federal dollars we get for some projects. Like if it's a state highway, it's a state highway, and for state highways, there's 80% is federal. 20% is state or local. So if you have a state highway that's going through your town, okay, you have 103.
7.
You have 7. I have 5. We all have a state highway that goes through our town. So if there's a project, paving project, construction project, on that whole piece, that whole route, whatever it may be, like Route 7.
36.
80% of the cost of that is picked up by the federal government. 10% of the cost of that is picked up by the state. And 10% is picked up by the municipality that the road happens to go through. So when 103 gets built, the part that goes through Ludlow, is 10% Ludlow's going to be responsible for. The part that goes through Shelburne and Route 7, 10%.
If it's a class 1 town highway, there are times when state numbered routes go through towns and they continue under state control. But yes, if it's a class 1 town highway, then the town usually has to pitch in 10% of that 20% non-federal.
So is that 10% on Shelburne then? On Route 7?
I don't,
Assume it
I
would be
don't know
one.
if it is.
I don't know if that is class one town highway or not.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I don't, anyway, doesn't matter.
7 is.
Like Berry City Main Street, that 302 turns into a class one town highway in the middle of the downtown there. So when that project went through, they were required to pay a portion of the 20% non-federal share, which is half, 10% normally.
And I know on Route 7, those towns
Yes.
pick that up. So that's for, just so folks know, there's a lot of federal money that comes in for our highway construction and paving on state highways. But the state has to match those dollars.
Correct.
We don't automatically get it. If we don't have enough money on the table to match those federal dollars, we leave federal dollars on the table.
Yeah.
So what happens within the T fund's revenues come from gas tax, diesel tax, car registration, driver's license, motorboat registration, motorcycle registrations. And if those fees aren't keeping up with meeting our match requirements for the federal, then we lose federal dollars. And then it goes back to our municipalities where we can't help them because we don't have enough money on the state coffers to match the federal dollars to come down.
Correct. And
Makes
that,
sense to folks?
Yes, yeah.
I don't understand the context though.
And it's gonna be sometimes too expensive for us to buy the land to do, Connor's idea, right? Or
The
no?
context for what? To get to H? What was your question?
Well, this transportation, is just that there's a federal encumbrance on it or a clawback, is that where the?
No, there's X amount of money that Congress allocates for Vermont for construction or paving projects. And we need to put state money on the table to match that, to draw it down. If we don't have enough state money on the table to draw down the full amount, we end up leaving federal dollars on the table.
Well, I can say that the context to H50. Or we're not talking about H50.
No.
Oh, okay, that's
Maybe
what I was trying to
I
connect.
just want
dots
to
that weren't
give folks
there.
an overview in terms of how transportation dollars go out. Because when you were saying if you sell any property because you got federal dollars, it goes back. So for the interstate, you get 90% federal.
100.
It is now 100?
It's 100%. Yep.
Used to be
Yeah.
90-10.
Yeah, and there's 80-20 is sort of the lowest, and then 100% is the highest, and there's 80-10, there's 90-10 filtered in there as well. But generally, the interstate or intersection projects are 100% federally funded.
And do we have to match that at all?
No,
And that's all over interstates, all three.
yeah,
Well, 3.
That's
90, 93, 91, and
Yeah.
89.
But 93 doesn't come into Vermont.
Yep.
Does it?
Just a small piece
We're up in
in
the-
St. Johnsbury where it hooks on to 91. Yeah,
Just let everybody know we're special. We have three.
yeah, it's very, very small.
So when you're a kid coming home from Boston, you don't pay attention, that's how you come home. Done that before.
So I just wanted folks to understand that there's a lot of federal money that comes into our state for our highways, our roads, our bridges, our culverts, all of this. And we really have to be cognizant of making sure we have enough state money on the table to draw down as much as we can for federal dollars. Because we shouldn't be leaving federal dollars on the table. Period. Because then that's more pressure onto our towns.
So I understand all that. So it's the context of, I guess Joe was asking this, maybe I'm not gonna ask it the same way or whatever. Your bill has nothing to do with the roads,
It doesn't, no.
but
And I think, like, what I'd be interested in, and I don't know if this is available, Rob, if you sort of take away the right of ways, the roads, the bridges and everything, how easy is it to get the data to quantify, how many acres, how many buildings, how many plots do we have, and kind of take it from there, right?
Yeah, great question. Actually, about 8 or 10 years ago, and it was my time in right of way, we actually got federal highway funding to map all the parcels in the
Okay.
state. And so that exists today. We actually, when we completed that project, which was about a 4-year project, and I'm not talking just our parcels, every parcel in the state of Vermont that's owned. So we mapped all of those. We took that in,
Private as well?
yes,
Wow.
every parcel.
Okay, yeah.
We're done with like the parcel mapping.
Every parcel,
Yeah.
yep. Yep.
Cool.
If you go to realtor.com and you pull up a property for sale in Vermont and you hit the map and you see the boundary lines, those are from our project. And so that project, when we were done, we handed it over to VCGI.
Mhm.
And they manage that now. If you,
On geographic information.
Vermont Center for Geographic Information. Yeah, sorry.
We used to fund them in here.
So if you go to their homepage, on the right-hand side, I think the second link down, it says it says parcel mapping. And if you click on that you can zoom in anywhere in the state and see the parcels in any town. It's
Whether
not perfect.
it's private parcels,
Yep.
it's everyone.
Yes, everyone. And so because it's GIS based, there's information behind that. And so you can do a search and search for state of Vermont. It gets a little awkward sometimes because whether it was inputted as ST of VT or state of Vermont or how they did it, but the owner generally should say state of Vermont, and you can sort of filter out those parcels across the state.
Awesome. Yeah, that's excellent.
And we do have a lot of parcels. We work closely with BGS on a lot of properties, or if they are looking for some property. Like you said, Madam Chair, we're always looking for state funds to make sure we match our federal funds and use 100% of that. Some of the leases and the sales that we do, that money goes to the Title 23 fund, and it basically turns into state funds, which allows us to use that money to then leverage the federal funds. And so that is sometimes where those state funds come in. It's not a huge number, but it does happen.
So with the knowledge or work that you've done, are there some viable properties that AOT owns that would be suitable for building of housing?
I'm sure we have parcels that would probably meet the needs out there. Again, thinking about Joe Aja and some of the stuff that he was saying, it really depends on size, shape, what we're looking for. But even the federally funded, land, we have lands out there that basically we have to go through a surplus property process. And if we find there's no transportation need and there's no direct public need, meaning that the entire public can use the property, we can sell those lands off for fair market value. And sometimes that could even help a developer that wants to get something on the ground. So there's that as well. But yeah, we have lands out there that we could surely probably look at closely if somebody saw that it might meet a need out there.
Oh, Travis first, sorry.
How often do you do those evaluations?
Usually it's sort of on demand. Like sometimes we have private individuals, maybe for their home, maybe for their business or whatever, they'll come in and they'll ask for maybe where we have a wide right of way, they might ask for a couple of feet for whatever it may. Occasionally it's because of an encroachment. Maybe their septic system is encroaching or they want more parking in a parking lot or something like that. But they do come in, fairly often.
But to do this sort of report annually for this purpose, how taxing would that be?
I have the sense because of the parcel mapping project that was done and the GIS information that's behind the scenes, it probably would not be that hard.
Because a lot of it's done already.
Yeah, and if you have GIS folks that can search the data and come up with the information, it's probably not that difficult. Yeah. We've done it a little bit before when we were looking for like places that could accommodate some solar infrastructure.
Although, like you said, if it's state of Vermont versus VT state of or STD,
got to be a little
different queries.
Absolutely.
You have to know which ones.
And this is so helpful already, Rob, please. So the process right now for like a BGS site is you would need approval of this committee in the Capitol bill to be able to sell it. when you sell an AOT piece of land, does that go through the transportation committee or the trans bill? Do you need any approval or do you have authority to sell that?
We have authority to a certain level, and I think if it goes over a certain threshold, then we have to get approval. But we're pretty much open to do what we need to do with the property. Because the funds stay pretty much in our hands, right? The federal funds, the state funds come in, we buy the parcels. Down the road, there might be a need to either sell off the entire parcel or a portion of it. That money's got to go back into the Title III funds, which just comes back into our coffers, and then we use that money to leverage federal funds again.
Right?
But you said you're up to a certain level, you can sell the property without legislative authority. Do you know what that level is? And then it would kick in legislative authority to sell?
I'm not positive on that. I'd have to get back with you.
Check in, because I know with BGS, what Connor said, they don't have the authority to sell property unless it's given by the legislature. And Forest Parks and Rec do not have authority to swap property and to sell, I believe, without legislative authority.
I'll definitely check. I know on the federally funded project, parcel side, we have a required process in place that's approved by the federal government. We have to go through that process to
This is federal dollars.
to get to an end point of where we sell it. But I'll definitely double check on the other.
Joe?
So depending on going back to age 50, would this bill then, if it, lives out of here, have to go to transportation because of its context of transportation properties? No?
I wouldn't think so, but I was thinking that we should reach out to Transportation Committee for this, that you don't want to just, because we are dealing with transportation land. So I think it would be wise of us to reach out to the chair of transportation and have that conversation. As well as beyond BGS, because I'm just also, is A&R land? You'd be looking at A&R land as well?
And I went into this thinking mostly BGS. I was almost ready to say maybe we exempt everybody else, but now that Rob's talking, absolutely not. It sounds like it's a good thing. So, my guess is that A&R is going to be a bit of a horse of a different color as far as how easy it is to develop, but I could be wrong. I'd love to hear from them. Yeah.
What do you mean by?
Be steep and forest.
How hard to develop?
Well, it's going to be outside population centers, I think, a lot of it,
okay, that's what you mean. I thought you
Yeah.
meant something else. I just
And it'll
thought-
be steep and forested without the infrastructure.
I thought you meant develop the I got you.
John,
Who reaches out to
we'll
transportation?
figure that out.
Okay, because this is new to,
But I have a thought.
okay.
Council.
Mom always
That's
has.
for him.
I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought. Oh, for the committee, we are already looking at two pieces of AOT land in Essex,
Right.
which was part of the Cirque Highway.
Right, for
Correct.
For the
Just to put that out there on the table.
And those are, one specifically, when we bought the corridor for the circumferential highway, we definitely had a right-of-way limit, but a lot of times we had to buy the entire parcel. So there's land sort of spilling outside of what was the transportation corridor. And I think at least one of those sites, that's what we're looking at, is sort of that additional land outside the corridor and keeping the center corridor transportation facility.
So in a situation, like, say for this particular bill, in a situation that there was AOT property that could be used, you would then sell it to the private developer who would be building the house. Is that what you're sort of thinking?
This is what I'm thinking. And I'll tell you the genesis of this idea comes from just 5 miles over here. And I think this was a very innovative approach by Berry City to sell 2 lots downtown, bipartisan vote from their city council for $1, right? Because they knew it was more valuable for them in the long run to have this on the tax rolls than the initial benefit of getting that cost for it.
And it's not in the floodplain.
One is, one isn't, but I think we can also be creative as we look at mitigation to, do we even need to lose state parking necessarily if the housing is built up and we keep the lower footprint? I think we could be creative. Yeah.
Do you have any parking lots that I know that's a stupid question, but do you have any parking lots, one that you're not using? I can't imagine you do.
I can't think of any off the top of my head that we don't. I mean, generally parking lots to us are park and rides, like the Williston parking lot and such. So those are open facilities for the public to use and, get a lot of use or little use depending on where they are. But I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Don't want.
Oh,
a parking garage.
Parking garage.
Another parking garage? No, 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 no.
Hope you're good to.
Yeah, well, I'll poke you back. Just wait. Oh,
But like, what about the parking lots over
well,
here?
that's the whole point for him.
Yes.
Are they, because like, what's
Our
your
internal terror.
take on that?
When you're pointing, what are you referring to?
All back here along
The
the
terrace.
from the bridge to the high school.
A city.
So that's must be either BGS or city, right?
BGS.
BGS.
Okay, cool.
Call is
He's
quiet.
trying to
Easy.
put his, are you trying to put your bathroom over there?
I'm taking a break in the bathroom.
A direct
Gotcha.
pipe. It'll be a direct pipe.
That's BGS.
Direct
question.
discharge.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
BGS.
It's just across the street.
We're just a little punchy.
Who would actually work with this report? So it would probably be this committee for BGS properties, but there'd be other jurisdictions for other.
Be.
And
Could be.
I thought of a couple models for this, right? It could be a list of properties, that just come directly to the committees that we can look over ourselves. But if we don't feel like there's capacity for that, maybe there is a committee put together on the off session to do a little deeper dive and analysis and do an analysis of this and say, you know what, these are the top 25 properties. I think we put them all on the market for $1 and see who comes with some creative solutions to build some housing there. Just like Down Street did in Barry for $1.
It's just like
I think-
naming
Oh,
buildings.
Jesus, no, we're not going.
I
On
know.
a question, so
Yeah.
on what Joe just asked,
Yeah.
so.
I got an
would-
answer.
Would this have to go, so we have BGS, transportation has AOT,
Mhm.
environment maybe, or somebody would have, Forest Park, Directory, whatever. So there's like multiple committees is what I guess what we're getting at, not just us looking at it. Or are you putting together an ad hoc committee? I want to see what you're expecting, or what are your thought process?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like, there's a reason it's one sentence long. It's a concept.
Okay.
And I think through the committee process, we could develop it into something that, gets a lot of people at the table and starts thinking creatively.
So do you work with BGS? Does BGS have your lands in their database? Or does BGS just have their state-owned land that they have? That would be one question to ask.
So the database that we use is that parcel database. So we have all the information for all the lands to look at. And I believe BGS is using some of the same information. There is some crossover there. We have lands that we are very familiar with that are actually owned and controlled by BGS. And then we have some of our own lands as well. Like I said, rest areas on the interstate, Williston rest area, right? We take care of some of the sidewalks and some of the paving and stuff like that for them and pay for that through transportation funds. But the buildings and the internals and what goes on there is BGS. That's sort of a BGS site. Different than that is our transportation maintenance facilities, right? Where we have those are fully controlled by us for the most part. We have our own facilities folks in-house that take care of heating systems and whatever need to take place there. So, I mean, we definitely work closely with BGS on some of this stuff though.
So the way the bill's written, and if you have the bill in front of you, this is a good learning experience for folks. If you have the bill in front of you, which you're gonna need. If you go to page 1 of the bill, is there a bill up there, H50?
Yeah, we got it.
Anyone page 50 that can share with Kevin?
That's not, I don't have
That's
it.
not it.
Sorry, I don't.
You need the bill in front of you. Carpet. So Will, maybe you could
Yeah.
pull it up, then share it with Kevin. Oh, he's
I just
making
printed
copies.
one. Did anybody else need me a print one?
No, I'm good.
This is a good example of how you read a bill. This one's easy. I'm gonna wait until everyone has a copy.
Connor just wants to get on CAM.
Then put it in your, then those in a
Oh,
box.
it's like a lengthy interview. It took 15 minutes that morning. I was working out.
We've had us.
Brief again, I tell you.
You should have heard him
We're on
talking.
YouTube,
All over the
we're on
box.
YouTube. Jeez. No, I'm just gonna use this as a teaching moment.
Okay, shouldn't share this one, right?
Wow.
I know, me too. I lose everything.
You got a file. It's the only way to keep it, and even then, you're not gonna find it.
Yeah, there was just so many papers.
You're gonna get worse. So Brian's making copies, right?
Yeah.
You're good, you're bearing with us.
All good.
I have-
All good.
In my file.
I want to help the new members because it's really important when we're gonna get into.
You've got a file, put
No,
it in
that's
your
fine.
file.
We're gonna get into some real complicated bills.
I did. Try it again.
Is it dead? Is that not working?
Paper.
Is it out of paper?
I don't know. Just that's always, that's what happens to me.
John, PC load though there? Isn't that the error message?
Why are all the committees around us not there? Commerce isn't there, energy isn't there.
Is it dead?
Huh?
Oh, it's up. I don't know if maybe you're linked to the wrong one or something.
No, it's definitely going to thirties.
Well, the machine is not impressed, so.
Well, maybe Will and Kevin could share. Other folks that, so if you go to page 1, okay, and you go to line 14.
Yeah.
Okay, section 1, 29 VSA, section 152. 29 VSA is the title of a bill, the book that our state statutes are in. So those green books, okay, the green books up here, they all have a title. Okay, or you go online and you search Vermont statutes, and then it has all the titles. And each book or each title covers a different part of state government. Title 29 is where the Department of BGS resides. So Title 29 VSA, Section 152. 152 is if you go down to line 15, is the duties of the Commissioner of BGS. So it lines the rest of the bill. You're going to see those 3 dots, which means there's part that they're not including in the bill, but it starts with little b that talks about what the commissioner is allowed to do. And the commissioner shall, 1, prior to transfer of any unexpended balances between the projects, blah, blah, blah. You flip it. And then on line 8, you've got number 2, what the commissioner has to do is consult with the state treasurer regarding implementation of projects in each capital Appropriations Act. So if you go down to line 12, you're going to see 3, and all this paragraph is totally underlined. That is proposed new language. So what the proposed new language says, that on or before January 15th of every new biennium, so that's the first year of a biennium, that the commissioner of BGS, because you're under the duties of the commissioner of BGS, needs to submit to the General Assembly a report that examines whether the state's real property, including underutilized lots, is suitable for conversion into affordable housing. That's how you read this bill.
Yep.
That's how you're going to read all the other bills. It gets more complicated. What we can do with the language that is being proposed, we can accept that language. Or we can say that language doesn't work. We're not doing the bill, period. It's too complicated. We're not going to do the bill. Or we can say there's more factors that we want to bring in here. Such as, do we just want BGS to do this? Do we want Forests and Parks to do it? Do we want AOT? If that's the case, then the question is, do you have all of that go through the commissioner of BGS? Because it's in that statute, in that title? Or do you strike this whole thing and start from scratch and have it come from some other entity?
I mean, you could,
So that's where we work with Ledge Council. We work with figuring out more testimony that we take, figure out what direction we want to go in. And then who did you work with on this? John?
That was John. Yep.
And then we'd work with John to draft up a new
Yep.
language. So Joe?
I'd say alternatively, you could just narrow the scope to BGS. You know, that which is the role with BGS.
Well, that's what it is right now.
That's what it is right now. Because you're,
No, that's not how it reads.
yes, it is, because you're under the duties of the commissioner of BGS. You're in Title 29, Section 152.
But the report says examines whether any of the state's real property. It doesn't define it as real property is managed by BGS.
If it's under BGS, so was your intent with that language just for BGS to do it?
Initially, I was thinking that, but as we're talking to the witnesses here, I think the scope may expand. And, you know, like, even as I look at this, I've got some, okay, what does suitable mean, right? Does that need to be defined more? Is it like 20 miles from a population center? What does affordable housing mean, right? That's often a question too. So those might be things we
Right.
would need to flesh out.
And I even like in in line, in the third section there at the end, where you said including underutilized lots in population centers, which I know you're getting at there,
Mhm.
but I would almost leave it open and including underutilized lots.
Or, you know, as pointed out, this is under BGS, but now you're saying, okay, look at all state properties. And I, maybe it's nitpicking. Does the BGS commissioner really have? I mean, she can pull up a report, but she have the authority to look or responsibility really to look at AOT's
Mhm.
property, you know? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different parts to look at. So how to word it and
Just, you know,
So that's what we need to ask when the commissioner of BGS comes in. Is the interpretation of this just BGS lands that the commissioner will be reporting on? That was your initial intent.
Mhm.
But after hearing testimony, what Joe mentioned, the way it's drafted, it looks like it's whether any state real property. But would that be within the BGS jurisdiction? Because you're in the BGS statute. You're in their title. So would it be any of their state real property, or is it all real property that's in the state?
Could I add some context just back to the data that's out there with the parcel mapping? Anytime you're qualifying this down to something out like reasonable, underutilized, right? When you say that, the database only has certain amount of information. And so if you stick to that, and we've done some of these searches before where we're looking like, give me every parcel that's over 5 acres, slopes less than 15%, you know, there's a lot of that information in there. But if you get outside of the information that's in the GIS database, it does get more complicated to the question earlier of who's going to then take that, distill it down to the next level that the database can't. So it can get much more complicated faster.
yeah.
So what was your thought that initially you just had that overview? And then at least people that were working on affordable housing would have that basis to start working on?
Yep, I'd really like either us or another group charged by us to do a deeper dive, say, okay, these are the properties on the table. We're interested in hearing from this. And I think there's a number of things you could do, like the common legislative tricks would be like the commissioner of BGS in consultation with the AOT secretary and A&R secretary will submit this list. So they're in the mix. Another way you could do it, just go above everybody. Secretary of Administration submits it every year.
Mhm. Mhm. So we'll reschedule with Commissioner of BGS. And then after that, we will see where we are. And Joe, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to reach out to Matt Walker,
Again,
Chair of Transportation, show him this bill and just mention we had testimony from AOT, and there may be some AOT land that might be that might be possible, and give him a heads up that we're looking at this so that he knows in case he wants to weigh in.
If you ever happen to see him.
Well, if he shows up to the floor, I'm 5 feet away from him, so.
Yeah.
If he is hard to miss, he's not a small guy.
If you can give him that heads up, because he may want to weigh in or he may not. Just give him a heads up and show him the language to the bill. It'd be good. Any other thoughts before we break? Okay. Hey, Rob.
For having me.
Thank you so much.
You stayed in here for a long time.
Obviously, one of our final moments.
Yeah, one of our final moments. We don't have anything scheduled after the floor, do we? Do folks want to come back and kind of rehash what we heard this morning a little bit?
I have a meeting with, how's it?
After the
They're
floor?
dragging some of us into the speaker's office.
Okay, well, I guess maybe we don't meet. Then maybe it can, Phil and I can spend some time scheduling, because we've got percolating that we need to deal with a lot next week. And the following week. Appropriations Committee, they always send the respective policy committees sections of the budget that pertain to them. And a letter came out to the chairs yesterday or Wednesday night. It came out, and I went through it last evening. There are sections of the budget that we need to look at and give our recommendations to appropriations. Okay. One piece that's going to take a lot of work on our part, I believe, is with DOC. There's a $300,000 request in the budget for the St. Johnsbury work camp, which the governor mentioned in his budget address, that would be converted into providing services for folks who are incarcerated. So we'll have to weigh in to that. That's going to get into a lot of layers, I think. And I want to get that scheduled as quickly as we can next week so we can start working on that. That's a big piece right there.
Yeah. What layers are better to wait and find out?
Well, we've got to make our recommendation back to Appropriations Committee by the 26th of February. So.
I just wondered what layers to the question that you were.
Well, it's a work camp.
Yeah.
So it's structured as just an open area, more like a barracks. So what type of treatment services would DOC be providing? What would need to occur to the building? Because you're dealing possibly with security levels that building's not adapted for. What is the town of St. Johnsbury going to say?
Yep.
Because you're changing the use.
Yep.
And that could be very, very volatile. When we converted that into from a work camp to housing folks who, we call them the B1s, who had reached their minimum and could be furloughed, but for lack of housing out there, we were holding on to them. We had about 150 folks at that point, and we wanted to use that facility. We did a lot of negotiating with St. Johnsbury for that. So that's what, that's what we're gonna have to work with.
A little start for us.
No gold star for us. Sorry, we got two of them.
We're doing good.
So we're gonna schedule that for next week, but that's gonna be some work that we're gonna have. Some of it is perfunctory, that it's a given that it's okay, like pilot payments. I don't believe so. There's not enough people can come back. Okay.
I mean, I actually would like to, I'll come back and talk to you because I really I had wrote down a bunch of things and I'd like to like
Okay.
whatever the follow-up is. So I'll be here.
Okay, I'll be here.